Welcome to Infidelity Diaries. Explore the secrets and stories of infidelity with us. The cup of tea seems to have a life of its own as it slips from my hands. I don't even realize what has happened at first. Only when I hear the shards clatter loudly and annoyingly on the floor do I come to my senses. The sound shatters the silence, but then everything falls quiet again. Only this time it's a different silence. Deafening, ominous. It fills the apartment like a thick fog, creeping into every corner, even the ones where John and I used to be together. He's gone. The door is still trembling from the slam, and his footsteps echo somewhere beyond the walls, as if someone is lost in the maze of someone else's life. The last thing I heard was his rough, harsh voice. We weren't really fighting. No, it was just another scene from our play. Poisoned phrases that we hurl at each other over trivial things. But today was different. Something snapped inside me, like that cup. And I realized, this isn't just a fight over some nonsense. Something is cracking, and I'm not sure it can be fixed. The shards scatter across the floor, and I automatically start picking them up. The sharp edges prick my fingers, and I feel a faint tingling. The tiny cracks on my hands remind me that every day, John and I do the same thing, tear each other apart into little pieces. And every time, we think we can glue them back together. I place the shards on the table and look at them as if they're telling the story of my life. The apartment, which once seemed like the embodiment of a perfect world, spacious, bright, with huge windows letting the sunlight pour in, now feels frozen. The glass surfaces no longer reflect joy, only coldness and alienation. And it doesn't take long for me to understand that it's not just the apartment that has changed. I've changed. We've changed. Why is it like this? I whisper into the void, knowing there won't be an answer. John has left for another meeting. It's become his routine. The job, which once was a source of pride, has now turned into an excuse for his absence. I know there's more behind it. It's his way of escaping. Escaping from me, from us. But how ironic it is. He's running, yet I'm not trying to stop him either. I look at my reflection in the smooth surface of the table. It's like meeting a stranger. I see myself, but I don't recognize the woman I used to be. The one who laughed with John, went on long evening walks with him, talked about dreams. Now we're like two actors trapped in a play neither of us wants to perform. We've forgotten the lines, but we keep standing on stage, because leaving would mean admitting defeat. I can't pinpoint when exactly things started to go wrong. It was gradual, drop by drop. At first, nothing was noticeable. Small cracks in our communication, in our care for each other. The gaze became empty, words cold, and touches rare and formal, like the faint breeze you barely notice. Once, I dreamed of a home full of love, laughter, and support. But now, I can't even remember the last time John really looked at me. Looked not just as someone who shares a roof with him, but as a woman, as a partner, as someone he loves. Sometimes it feels like I'm just furniture to him. Useful, but not important. But maybe he's become the same to me. That thought frightens me. I run my hand across the table. The cold glass, its smooth surface, it's the only thing that feels real right now. Inside, everything feels like it's falling apart into the same shards as that cup. But I'm not sure if I can pick them up. I look at the pieces of the cup again, and suddenly I realize this is a sign. Not just broken dishes, but a metaphor for our life. John and I can't keep up this charade any longer. I don't know what will happen next, but I do know one thing. Things can't stay the way they are. A wave of anxiety washes over me. It's like standing on the edge of a cliff, the wind growing stronger, and I don't know whether to step forward or retreat. Every day, when John leaves for work, I feel this rift. Like something has slipped away, like something important is passing us by, and we keep moving in different directions. Anxiety grips me, but I can't quite grasp what's wrong. It's not just boredom, not just exhaustion. It's something deeper, something that's slowly killing both of us. I get up and start pacing around the room, as if trying to escape my own thoughts. But where can I run? I think again about our last conversation with John. Those empty, biting phrases we throw at each other, never discussing anything real. I no longer know what we feel for each other. Is there even anything left? I stop by the window and look out at the city sprawling before me. Cars zoom by, people hurry around like ants, absorbed in their concerns. All that life is happening out there, outside, but I feel disconnected from it. It's like I'm watching it through thick glass, like through a display window, unable to touch what I see. Something has to change. I feel it in every cell of my body. But the fear of change gnaws at me. If I take a step forward, what will happen? Will I find myself, or will I lose myself completely? The phone on the table starts vibrating. I walk over to it, but I don't pick it up. It's John. His name lights up on the screen like a reminder that our life is now just a ritual. But I'm not ready to answer the call, not ready to hear his voice again. I sit down on the floor, hugging my knees, and keep staring at the screen until the phone falls silent once more. William reappears in my life unexpectedly, like a warm breeze on a cold day, bringing with him something familiar yet elusive at the same time. I don't even know why I became interested in hearing from him again, but after that fight with John, I'm grasping at any chance to escape this endless cycle of emptiness. When I saw William's message, something clicked inside. He was the person I knew before John and I got swept up in this endless whirlwind of routine and nothingness. William is that part of me I buried long ago, hoping it would never resurface. We agreed to meet for coffee, a small cafe on the corner, the place where we used to spend hours talking about life, laughing without a care in the world. It hasn't changed. The same wooden tables, the same smell of freshly baked buns mixed with the rich aroma of strong coffee. As I step inside, for a moment, I forget everything. The worries and questions dissolve like sugar in a cup. But the moment I see him, reality hits sharply again. He has changed. Of course, years have passed, but something about him remains the same. His confident posture, that soft, calm gaze that once used to uncover the deepest corners of my soul. Emma. His voice envelops me like a warm blanket on a frosty day, and I realize how much I've missed that feeling. A smile appears on his face, a little mischievous, as if he knew that sooner or later we would meet again. Hi, I reply, and in that one word, there seems to be everything: joy, caution, and a hint of sadness. We sit at our old table, and time begins to flow differently. I laugh, listen to his stories, but inside, I feel something more. Our conversations sound easy, but there's something deeper. His gaze has become more insistent, serious. At first, I pushed the feeling away, convincing myself that we're just old friends who haven't seen each other in a while. But deep down, I know it's much more complicated. The words we speak seem like a cover for what's happening on a deeper level. "How's your life?" he asks, and I feel how that simple question weighs on me like a stone. I smile and look away. Should I tell the truth? That my life is now just an existence next to someone I barely know? That every day is a struggle with indifference and loneliness? I can't tell him that. Instead, I shrug and say the usual words. Everything's fine. Work, home, as usual. William looks at me closely, and I know he senses my lie. He's always been like that, able to see through the masks I put on. Really? His voice is soft, but there's something in it that makes me freeze for a second. No, I unexpectedly reply for myself. Not really. I haven't known what fine means for a long time. The confession bursts out of me like a long suppressed cry. I don't even know why I said it. William nods, not surprised, as if he expected these words. His hand reaches for mine, and when our fingers touch by accident, something inside me flips. That simple touch feels like a return to the past, to the times when our lives were simpler, when everything was simpler. At that moment, I feel his gaze. It becomes more intense, as if he's studying every emotion of mine. We fall silent. The cafe around us continues its life. People laughing, someone ordering another round of coffee. But to us, the noise seems to disappear. We are alone in this moment. You know, Emma, he says slowly, cautiously, as if each word is a step on thin ice. Sometimes I feel like nothing has changed. The same conversations, the same feeling that we can talk about anything, but I can't shake the thought that something between us was left unfinished. His words cut deep. They don't just touch, they stir up those layers of feelings I've tried not to touch for many years. But I realize he's right. We left something unfinished between us once, and now that feeling is surfacing, like a long, foggy dawn. My hand is still under his, and I don't pull it away. I feel something igniting inside me. It's not just a memory, it's something new. Something I've been waiting for a long time, but was too afraid to admit. And suddenly, he makes a move. Light. Almost imperceptible, but so decisive. His lips touch mine, and for a moment, the world falls silent. I don't have time to comprehend what's happening. My mind protests, but my body betrays me. And then he pulls away. For a second, I can't breathe, can't think. We've crossed a line I didn't even know existed. Inside me, anxiety pulses, but it's mixed with that strange, warm feeling I can't ignore. We remain silent, but the quiet between us no longer feels neutral. I pull back, stand up, as if trying to run away from this moment. But deep down, I know. We can't go back to where we were before. We've crossed a boundary, and there are no simple answers anymore. I have to go, I barely manage to say, feeling panic rising inside me. Emma! He tries to say something, but I'm already not listening. I turn and head for the door, feeling his gaze burning into my back. Inside, there's a fire I've been trying to extinguish for a long time, but now it's flaring up again with new strength. When I return home, I am overwhelmed by a feeling of complete detachment from reality. The memory of my kiss with William is still fresh in my mind. His lips, his touch, it all pulses through my memory, as if happening again and again with every step. I can't force myself to forget it. And maybe I don't want to. This sudden closeness with him shattered my usual worldview into pieces, just like that cup a few days ago. But what does it mean? Who am I now? I open the door to the apartment, and the first thing I feel is cold. Not the kind of physical cold that a blanket or hot tea can chase away, but the icy air of alienation that has long settled between John and me. He's already home. I sit at the entrance, hearing him slide across the floor into the living room. It reminds me of how we glide across the surface of our life, never touching the depth. You're back? His voice reaches me from the kitchen, without interest, without emotion. Just a fact. Yes, I reply, unsure of how to start this conversation. I stand there, hesitating to move further. Inside, a storm is raging, but I can't let it out. Or maybe I don't want to. I walk into the living room. John is sitting at the computer, as usual. His face is illuminated by the soft, bluish glow of the screen, and his eyes remain fixed on his work. He used to always look at me when I came home. He would ask how my day went, showing interest in little things no one else would notice. But those times are long gone. Now, he's like a ghost wandering through our home, and I'm a stranger who accidentally ended up sharing a roof with him. I sit down at the glass table, and it brings me back to the moment with the cup, its shards still living in my consciousness. The glass is cold to the touch, just like our relationship. I try to look at John, but I can't stand his unseeing gaze. How was your day? I ask, though it sounds more like mechanical politeness than genuine interest. I'm trying to cling to this familiar reality, where we still talk to each other. Fine, he answers briefly, as if he had to say something just to fill the void. We both know that's a lie. Nothing is fine. And it's unlikely things will ever be fine again. But neither of us wants to admit it. We continue to play this game, the game of normalcy, which has long ceased to be ours. I think about how easy it was for me to let William kiss me. It wasn't a decision I made after careful thought. It happened suddenly, spontaneously, and I didn't stop it. I don't even know if I wanted that kiss or if I was just looking for something to make me feel alive again. Maybe I just wanted to feel significant. But what does that kiss say about me? That I miss intimacy so much? Or that I've stopped loving John a long time ago? I try to remember the last time John and I were truly close. Not physically, no, that's too simple. I'm talking about the closeness we had in the beginning, when we could talk for hours, sharing our deepest thoughts, when I could just look at him and understand everything without words. Now, it's not just silence between us. There's a wall, one that seems impossible to break through. Do you want dinner? I ask, though I'm not even sure if I want to cook. Not now, he replies without even turning around. His voice is mechanical, distant, as if he's already far away, in another reality. I realize that our conversation ends before it even starts, not because we don't want to talk, but because we have nothing left to say to each other. We live in the same apartment, but it's as if we're in different universes. He doesn't see me, and I no longer feel his presence. And that terrifies me. I sit at the table, watching his silhouette, trying to understand how we got here. How did we go from being loving partners to two strangers merely sharing a space? But an even scarier question is, do I want to change it? Do I want to try to go back to what we once had? Or have I already gone too far? How are you? I ask, but my voice is too quiet, and I doubt he even heard me. John doesn't respond, still absorbed in his work. I sit there, feeling the growing chasm inside me. This isn't just loneliness, it's the feeling that I no longer belong to this life, that I'm standing on the edge of something new, but I'm too afraid to take the step. I can't tell John about meeting William. I can't admit that I crossed a line, but if I don't, it will only deepen the abyss we're both drowning in. The silence in the apartment becomes unbearable. I catch myself trying to remember a time when our conversations were alive, when our words meant more than just exchanging information. But I can't. All my memories are blurred, like an old photograph where the faces of people are no longer distinguishable. At some point, I get up from the chair and walk to the window. Outside, everything is as it always is. Cars drive down the street. People rush about their business, not even noticing each other. I feel like there's the same chasm between me and this world as there is between me and John. I'm here, but at the same time, I'm not. Like a ghost, trapped in the cage of my own life. I don't know how to tell him the truth. And worse, I'm not sure I want to. After all, the truth could destroy everything, even the fragile illusion we maintain. But how long can we keep living in this lie? When John leaves on a business trip, I'm left alone in our big, and now even emptier house. Without his presence, these walls, which haven't felt cozy to me for a long time, become almost unbearable. I wander from room to room like a lost ship in the fog, unsure of where to dock. Thoughts spin in my head, but they seem cursed, giving me no peace, yet bringing no resolution. Loneliness gnaws at me. This isn't the usual silence that follows John's departure for work. It's something deeper, more terrifying. A sense that I no longer belong to this place, no longer belong to my own life. And it's precisely in this moment that I see a message from William. How are you? Simple, yet in this question, I hear much more than mere curiosity. It's as if behind these words lies everything we've left unsaid for so long. My hand almost automatically types the reply. I'm fine. But it's a lie, and I know it. He knows it too. I don't even hesitate when he suggests we meet. Why? Maybe because with him, I feel alive again? Or because I just need to escape this emptiness that's consuming me with every passing minute? We agree to meet at the old bookstore that once was our refuge. I remember how we used to wander through the shelves for hours, discussing books, philosophy, life. But today, the store feels different. It's the same, yet the atmosphere has changed. Now, it's not just a place where we can hide from the outside world. Now, It's a place where I can't hide from myself. As I walk inside, the smell of old books wraps around me like a warm blanket. It brings back pleasant memories. But now, those memories are tinged with a strange tension. William is already waiting for me by one of the shelves, engrossed in reading a book, but I immediately notice that he saw me long before he looked up. We both know that this meeting is not just a friendly gesture. We both feel that something has changed. Hi, he says, his voice quiet, but with an undertone of something deeper. Hi, I reply, trying not to show my nervousness, but my voice sounds tense. We exchange brief smiles that no longer carry the ease they once did. We start talking about books, about life, but the conversation feels more strained. Every word seems to carry a double meaning, and I feel as if something more is lurking beneath the simple phrases. I try to focus on discussing a favorite author, but my thoughts keep drifting back to that kiss. It echoes in my memory, like a distant sound that won't fade away. Do you remember how we used to dream about opening our own bookstore? William suddenly says, his gaze drifting off into the distance, as if he's reliving the past. I nod, smiling. Yes, I remember. We dreamed about everything: a bookstore, traveling, changing the world together one day. Back then, it all seemed so real, so possible. But life took a different turn, and we went our separate ways. Or maybe it was me who chose to go a different way. Those were good times, he says, and I feel the weight of his words pressing down on my heart. Yes, I agree, but deep inside, I know this memory is more than just nostalgia. It feels like a warning that something was left unresolved, and now that something is knocking on the door of my life again, demanding attention. He places his hand on my shoulder. It's a light touch, but it no longer feels accidental. I feel the walls inside me crumbling. Everything I've built to protect myself from my own feelings no longer works. This touch isn't just friendly, it's too warm, too personal, and I know we both feel it. I never forgot you. His words are soft, but in their quietness, there is something profound. I never forgot what I felt for you. My heart races, and I can't bring myself to say anything in response. My thoughts are jumbled, and no words come out. I try to smile, to turn it all into a joke, as I usually do when conversations get too serious. But this time, my smile feels fake. I can't hide behind words anymore. We've both changed. I finally find my voice. It's been so long. He nods, but his eyes say something else. They look at me with a depth that makes me feel vulnerable. Changed, but not completely, he says slowly, as if every word has its own meaning. My heart pounds, and I feel a fire igniting within me. It's not the calm, warm glow that keeps you cozy on a cold winter night. It's a flame I've been trying to extinguish for so long, but it still burns. William is right. Our friendship was never just friendship. It was always something more, and we both knew it. We just chose to ignore it. I look at him, and his hand touches mine again. At this moment, I realize I can no longer pretend. Yes, we've changed, but what's between us remains the same. This feeling, which I've suppressed for so long, is resurfacing once again. I take a deep breath, trying to compose myself, but it seems impossible. Every word, every touch from William erases the boundaries between what was and what is. I feel that we're standing on the edge, and stepping back is no longer an option. We both fall silent, but this silence is filled with much more than any conversation. I know I'm crossing a line from which there will be no return, but am I ready to admit it? Am I ready to step into this unknown space? When I approach the museum, the silence of the place literally envelops me. The large stone steps leading to the massive doors create a feeling that I'm on the threshold of something greater than just a walk among paintings. I feel my pulse slow down as I pass through the entrance, as if each step echoes not only in the museum, but also in my mind. Inside, it's empty, quiet, with only the sound of my footsteps on the marble floor and the muffled voices behind the walls. William is already waiting for me. He's standing at the entrance to one of the halls, leaning on the railing. His calm figure dissolves in the soft light falling through the huge windows. He has that same look, focused, attentive, yet with a kind of deep tenderness. At this moment, it seems to me that he knows how lost I am. Hi, I say softly, coming closer. The words seem to drown in the foggy space of the museum. Hi! His reply is almost a whisper, as if he doesn't want to disturb the invisible harmony around us. We start walking among the paintings in silence, but the silence isn't oppressive. On the contrary, it gives us time to think. I feel the weight of not only our past with William hanging over us, but also of that boundary we are about to cross. The tension in the air is palpable, hanging between us, slowly tightening a noose around our conversations and glances. The paintings around us are merely illusions, reflections of other people's lives, frozen on canvas. I catch myself thinking that right now, we too are like two figures in a painting, frozen in a moment where the choice hasn't yet been made, but its consequences are already felt. Every painting tells a story, but for some reason, it feels like these are stories about us. We stop in front of a painting depicting a couple dancing in an old garden. Their hands are gently intertwined, and there's something more in their eyes than just affection. I look at the painting and feel something begin to stir in my chest. They don't know what lies ahead for them either, William says softly, and his words pierce me to the core. I slowly turn to him, and our eyes meet. He's standing too close, and I can feel his breath on my skin. I know I should say something, that I should stop, but I can't. In this moment, everything seems so clear and yet terrifying at the same time. We're not just standing in front of a painting. We're standing in front of our own choice, and there's no going back. I've been wanting to tell you this for a long time, William continues softly, never breaking eye contact. I never stopped thinking about you. All these years, I couldn't forget. His words fall over me like a slow rain, making my heart race. I feel my barriers crumbling. Suddenly, all that I've been holding inside, all my attempts to maintain the illusion of control, begin to melt away. I no longer want to run from the truth. I don't resist when his hand touches mine. Our fingers intertwine, and this gesture feels like the most natural thing in the world. I can no longer pretend that there's nothing between us. A fire ignites inside me, but it's not the kind of passionate impulse that makes you forget everything. It's something quiet, deep, as if it's been brewing for a long time and has finally broken free. I don't resist when William leans in towards me. His lips touch mine. In that moment, I understand. This isn't just an infatuation, it's more. We have both crossed a line from which there is no return. This is a conscious choice, a step into the unknown, and I know there will be consequences. But I can't step back. I don't want to step back. We pull away, but our hands remain intertwined. I look at William, and in his eyes, I see the reflection of my own feelings. We stand in front of the painting, but now we've become part of this frozen moment, a story no one will ever tell, but that will remain inside us forever. I don't know what happens next, I say, trying to find the right words. But inside me, the quiet storm still rages. I don't know either. His response is simple, but it carries all the truth. We both don't know where this path leads, but there's no going back. We stand silently among the paintings. The museum is still quiet, but our hearts seem to be beating the rhythm of something new, unknown, yet inevitable. I'm not sure if I'm ready for the consequences of this choice, but I've already made it. We both have. Owen came home late in the evening. I heard the keys jingling in the door, and my heart clenched. Over the past few days, I had gotten used to his absence, even somewhat enjoyed the solitude. But now, with his return, the weight of what I was hiding came crashing down on me. It felt as though I was walking on thin ice, and with every step he took, that ice began to crack. He entered the house, dropped his suitcase without looking at me, and, as usual, headed straight to his study without saying a word. I stood in the middle of the room, trying to decide what to do next. My mind told me we needed to talk, but fear held me in place. The sense of betrayal inside me had become unbearable. But this betrayal wasn't just about the kiss with William. No, it was deeper than that. I had betrayed not only John, but myself, our life, our marriage. And now, as we were together again under the same roof, it became clear that something had to change. In the silence of the house, I heard his footsteps, slow and heavy, as if he were carrying the weight of the world. He appeared in the doorway of the living room and stopped. I looked at him, and the silence between us was deafening. It felt like, in that silence, you could hear the walls of our marriage collapsing one by one. Neither of us wanted to be the one to say it out loud, but silence can scream too. How was the trip? My voice sounded strained, as if I had forced myself to ask the question. Same as usual. His reply was short, almost indifferent. He didn't even look at me, just walked over to the kitchen table, poured himself a glass of water, and took a sip. That gesture seemed painfully ordinary, but it no longer carried the simplicity it once did. We both knew it was just a ritual, a remnant of what our relationship used to be. It was as if we were acting out scenes from an old play that had long since lost its meaning. We need to talk. I barely heard my own voice. The words came out so quietly that I wasn't sure if he heard them. He set the glass on the table, and for a moment, everything froze. I saw how his back tensed, as if he had been expecting this moment for a long time, but didn't want to acknowledge it. John turned around, and his eyes met mine. I saw in them exhaustion, disappointment, and, most of all, a cold acceptance of what we both already knew, but were afraid to say. About what? His voice was low, almost emotionless, but in that restraint, I sensed something more, something that had been simmering inside him for a long time, just as it had inside me. I couldn't look away any longer. This was the moment to tell the truth. I could no longer pretend, as we had been doing for months, maybe even years. I don't feel like I'm part of this family anymore. The words flew out unexpectedly quickly, as if I had no control over them. I thought I would say it more gently, that I would try to explain, but it was all too heavy, and the words just burst out. John didn't move. I saw his face change, but it wasn't shock. It was something else, as though he had known this moment would come and had just been waiting for me to gather the courage to say it out loud. Are you serious? His voice was still restrained, but there was a glint in his eyes. It was as if he was trying to catch a hint of a joke or misunderstanding in my words, but there was none. I nodded, and that simple gesture seemed to open the floodgates for all the pain I had been holding inside. I couldn't pretend anymore that everything was fine, that we could go back to what once was. It was all broken. I was broken. How long has this been going on? He asked, his voice growing a little louder, but still without much emotion. I knew he wasn't asking about a specific argument. He meant us, the two of us. A long time, I whispered, but he heard me. We've been trying to hold on to something that's been dead for a long time. The silence filled the room, but this time it was different. Not cold and oppressive, but almost relieved. It was as though the truth had finally been released and was now hanging between us, allowing us both to feel its reality. John came closer, but didn't sit next to me like he used to. He just stood across from me, like a stranger who had long lost the keys to this home. I knew this would happen eventually, he said quietly. We both did. I felt the tears welling up in my eyes. These weren't tears of grief or regret, but of emptiness. I had been preparing for this moment for a long time, but when it came, it didn't bring relief. What now? He asked, and his question sounded like something that demanded an immediate answer. But I didn't have one. I don't know, I answered honestly, but I can't keep living like this. We both remained silent. In that silence, I felt the last walls holding us together crumbling. Our marriage was just a shell, empty and cracked, that we could no longer maintain. And now that the truth was out, it was clear there was no going back. We were both standing on the ruins of what had once been our home, our family, and we didn't know what to do next. John nodded, as if accepting my decision. I could see that he was hurting too, but in that pain, there was also something freeing. We both understood that this was the end. "So that's it," he said, his voice hollow. I nodded again. Yes, that's it. When the door closed behind John, it wasn't just a sound, it was a boundary. That point after which there was no going back. His keys, tossed onto the table, seemed to lose all meaning, as if with them, he had left behind everything connected to this home. I stood frozen, paralyzed, as if this wasn't just the end of a conversation, but the end of an entire life. My mind was empty, thoughts refused to form into words, and feelings refused to accept the reality. I could hear his footsteps fading away in the hallway as he left, possibly forever. When silence finally swallowed the space, it washed over me like a wave, so heavy I could barely breathe. It wasn't just silence, it was emptiness, the kind that comes when you realize you've lost something truly important. I no longer felt like a part of my own life. Slowly, as if pushed by an invisible force, I sank onto the couch. The soft fabric offered no comfort, and I could feel the emptiness filling everything around me. It was as if our home, once filled with sounds, emotions, and life, had now become an empty shell. And I, just a part of that shell. I tried to understand what had just happened. This conversation, the one John and I had been avoiding for so long, had finally taken place, and now everything was destroyed. All our years, all our attempts to maintain the illusion that we were still a family, shattered in an instant. And it all felt so final, as if in one moment, all the bridges were burned and there was no way back. Inside me, everything screamed that this was the end. Even if I wanted to fix something, I no longer knew how. I had lost my bearings, lost myself. Our home, once a place of comfort and warmth, now felt foreign to me. Everything here reminded me of what used to be, and every memory was like a cold wind, cutting through my heart. My phone quietly buzzed on the table. I looked at it, not immediately realizing it was a message from William. He asked how I was, offering to meet. But the message brought no comfort, as it once had. It only deepened my despair because I understood that this wasn't what I was searching for. I had thought I would find salvation in him, but instead, our kiss, our meetings, only made everything more complicated. I picked up the phone, reading his message over and over again, but I didn't reply. My hands trembled, and I couldn't force myself to write anything. I had thought that William could fill the void that had formed between me and John. But now I realized that was an illusion. I had sought comfort, sought affirmation of my worth, but our closeness hadn't brought me relief. It had only taken even more from me. Now I understand that by giving in to these feelings for William, I didn't just lose John, I lost myself. I became entangled in my desires, my fears, and my inability to make a choice. And now, it feels like I'm left alone among the ruins of what was once my life. I gaze out the window, watching the world outside continue with its life. People rush about, cars speed down the road, everything as it always was. But now I look at it as something distant, unreachable, as if I no longer belong to this world, as if I've lost my connection to it, to myself, to life. I feel disconnected from everything, as if I'm standing at the edge of a cliff, and ahead is only the abyss. There's no way back, and I'm not sure if there's a way forward. All the bridges are burned, and all that's left is this emptiness, consuming me from within. I have nowhere to run. Everything is destroyed. And in this moment, I realize that I will have to face this reality. Head on, without illusions, without hope of rescue from the outside, because no one can save me except myself. Morning arrives, but with it, no relief. Everything feels just as heavy as it did the night before, maybe even worse. The house, which once was my refuge, now feels like an empty box, filled with ghosts. Every room is soaked with memories I can no longer escape from. I realize I can't stay here any longer. This place has become a cage, and I am a prisoner of my own mistakes. I make a decision. It's probably the only step I can take to preserve some sense of control. Run, pack my things, and leave. I'm not sure where I will go or what I will do next, but I know one thing. I can't stay here anymore, within these walls that have long stood witness to our broken life. I start packing slowly. Each movement feels like a struggle. I sort through clothes, books, trinkets that once meant something but are now just objects, lifeless, like me. I try not to look at the items that carry memories, afraid they will only deepen the pain. Each object has its own story, its own images, which I no longer need. The phone lies silently on the bed. It's like a symbol of everything I'm trying to ignore. Messages from William keep coming, but I no longer want to open them. Yesterday's despair hasn't passed. It has turned into a cold realization. This closeness with William, which seemed so natural, so right in the moment, has now become another illusion I need to rid myself of. I can no longer escape into his arms. I can no longer seek comfort in him. It was all a lie, a fantasy that could have filled the emptiness, but in reality only made it worse. My life is not his problem. I can't pass on the responsibility for my happiness to him. This is something I have to deal with on my own. Suddenly, there's a knock at the door. I freeze. For a moment, I know exactly who it is. My heart clenches, as if in one last attempt to warn me of something, but I already know what I have to do. William stands at the door. He looks at me with hope, but I can also see confusion and uncertainty in his eyes. He probably thought our last conversation was just a moment of weakness, that everything could be fixed. But I am no longer the person I was when we started this. I've changed, just like our relationship has. And now, looking at him, all I feel is cold. Emma. His voice is soft, but it's full of questions, full of desires. He's trying to find the words to bring us back, to explain something. But I've already made my decision. I shake my head silently. The words are stuck in my throat, but they need to be spoken. We can't continue this, William. It's over. My words come out clearly, like a sentence, and I see his face change. He wasn't expecting this. I see the pain, the disappointment flash in his eyes. He tries to say something, to argue, but I stand firm. Why? He finally asks, his voice full of desperation and confusion. He doesn't understand how everything changed so quickly. Because it was a mistake, I try to speak calmly. But inside, everything is trembling. We were both looking for something that isn't there. We're not who we were anymore. It was fleeting, but there's no point in continuing. He lowers his eyes, and for a moment, I feel sorry for him. But I know this is the only right decision. I can't hide behind illusions anymore. The path we've taken has led us to the edge, and now I have to stop. William takes a step back, as if realizing there's no point in fighting anymore. He looks at me one last time, but there is no hope in his gaze, only understanding. Without another word, he turns and leaves, leaving me in the house that now only reflects my inner state. I stand in the doorway, watching him walk away. My heart pounds as if it wants to burst out of my chest, but I don't move. Only one thought pulses in my mind. It's over. This final step wasn't just the end of a relationship with William. It was a step into a new space, into a reality where I have to face my emotions and fears on my own, without relying on someone else. I return to the room and sink back down onto the floor, surrounded by my things. This whole situation seemed impossible just a few months ago, but here I am, alone, and there's no longer any illusion of rescue. This is my choice. I chose this loneliness. In the silence, I hear the phone ring. His name lights up on the screen, but I don't even think about answering. All I can do is stare at the screen until the ringing stops. I can't listen anymore. I can't hear his words. It's all over. Now I'm alone, and there's no going back.